I woke up to the sterile white lights of the hospital ceiling, the monotonous beeping of machines filling the suffocating silence around me. My body felt like every breath a struggle against invisible weights pressing down on my chest. I tried to move my fingers, then my arms and a sharp pain shot through my spine. Where was I? How long had I been here? The last thing I remembered was standing at the top of the stairs, Sofia's face twisted with rage, her hands reaching out, and then nothing but darkness. A nurse rushed in, her eyes widening when she saw me conscious. "Miss Harper, you're awake. This is incredible. We weren't sure if you'd ever come back to us." Her voice was warm, but there was something else there, something that made my stomach drop. "Your family, they stopped all contact 2 days after you were admitted. They said you brought this on yourself." The words hit me like a physical blow. My family? My parents. Sofia. They abandoned me here. Left me alone in this cold hospital bed while I fought for my life. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, my voice barely a whisper. "How long?" "2 weeks," she said, softly adjusting my IV line. "You've been in a medically induced coma for 2 weeks. The fall down the stairs caused severe trauma. You're lucky to be alive." Fall. No, it wasn't a fall. It was a push. Sofia pushed me. The memory came flooding back with nauseating clarity. Before we go further into this nightmare, if you're feeling that anger rising in your chest, that sense of injustice that makes you want to scream, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear how this story ends, because trust me, what comes next is something nobody saw coming. Drop a comment below if you've ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most. Now let me take you back to where this all began, back to the day I thought my dreams were finally coming true. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing outside the glass tower of MedTech Solutions in downtown Denver, the autumn sun casting golden light across the city skyline. The air was crisp, carrying that peculiar mix of urban energy and mountain freshness that made Denver feel alive. In my hands, I held a contract that would change everything. $10 million. My algorithm, the AI medical diagnostic tool I'd spent 3 years developing, was finally getting the recognition it deserved. This wasn't just money. This was validation. This was proof that I wasn't the failure my family always made me feel like I was. The meeting had gone better than I could have imagined. The executives at MedTech had been genuinely excited about my work, asking technical questions that showed they actually understood what I'd built. The CEO, a woman named Margaret Chen, who'd made her fortune in biotech, had shaken my hand and told me I was going to change medicine. "This algorithm of yours, Grace," she'd said, her eyes bright with enthusiasm, "it's going to save thousands of lives. Maybe millions. Early disease detection has always been the holy grail, and you've cracked it." I remember pulling out my phone with trembling fingers as I walked to my car, scrolling to Mom's number. My heart was pounding with excitement as I waited for her to pick up. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, and I could hear the television in the background, some home renovation show she was always watching. "Mom." I did it. MedTech signed the contract. $10 million for my algorithm. Can you believe it? There was a pause on the other end longer than it should have been. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture her pursing her lips the way she did when she was about to say something disappointing. "That's nice, Grace. Listen, Sofia just got promoted to senior project manager at her firm. We're planning a dinner celebration this weekend. You should come. Nice." My life's work, my breakthrough achievement, and all she could say was nice before pivoting to Sofia's promotion. The familiar ache settled in my chest, that old wound that never quite healed. "Mom, did you hear what I said? $10 million. For work I've been doing for 3 years. This is huge. Yes, dear, I heard you." "That's wonderful. But you know how important Sofia's career is. This promotion puts her in line for VP in a few years. We're very proud of her. So Saturday at 6. Don't be late." I should have seen it then, should have recognized the pattern that had been there my entire life. But I was 28 years old and still desperately seeking their approval, still believing that maybe this time would be different. "I'll be there," I said quietly, swallowing the disappointment that tasted like acid in my throat. I sat in my car in that parking garage for 20 minutes after hanging up, watching other people come and go, celebrating their own victories or drowning their defeats. I thought about calling my best friend Cynthia instead, but I didn't want to admit how much my mother's reaction had hurt. So I drove back to my apartment in silence, the contract on the passenger seat next to me, a symbol of success that suddenly felt hollow. My apartment was a modest 1-bedroom in a converted warehouse in the Reno district, the kind of place that was trendy among young professionals, but nothing compared to Sofia's luxury condo in Cherry Creek. I'd bought it 2 years ago when my consulting work started paying well, proud of myself for achieving this milestone. But walking in that day after my mother's dismissal, it felt small and inadequate. I spent the next few days in a strange liminal space trying to enjoy my achievement while battling the familiar sense of not being good enough. At work, my colleagues were ecstatic. My boss, a brilliant developer named James Reeves, took me out for drinks at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. "Grace, you're a goddamn genius," he said, raising his glass. "I've been in this industry for 20 years, and what you've built is revolutionary. Don't let anyone tell you different." But when Saturday came, I found myself standing in front of my childhood home, that sense of inadequacy back in full force. The house looked the same as it always had, a sprawling colonial in one of Denver's most prestigious suburbs. The perfectly manicured lawn was a deep emerald green despite the autumn season, the result of weekly professional landscaping. The circular driveway held my father's Mercedes and my mother's BMW, symbols of success that mattered more to them than any real accomplishment. I'd grown up in this house, spent 18 years trying to measure up to Sofia, trying to be enough for parents who only seemed to see me as the spare child, the backup plan. My earliest memories were tinged with the awareness that I was always second best. When I was 5 and Sofia was 9, I'd won first place in a school art competition. My parents had hung the ribbon on the refrigerator, but the very next day Sofia brought home a trophy for soccer, and suddenly my ribbon was taken down to make room for her achievement. The pattern repeated itself throughout my childhood, a constant cycle of being eclipsed, overshadowed, forgotten. Sofia had always been the golden child. 4 years older, she had the perfect smile, the perfect grades, the perfect career trajectory. She was everything. I wasn't confident, commanding, ruthlessly ambitious. And our parents worshipped her for it. When Sofia was in high school, she was student body president, captain of the debate team, prom queen. I was in middle school, watching from the sidelines, wondering what I could possibly do to earn the same level of attention. By the time I got to high school, I'd learned to carve out my own niche. I threw myself into computer science and mathematics subjects where raw talent mattered more than social skills. I won regional coding competitions, got perfect scores on AP exams, built websites for local businesses. But every achievement I had was somehow diminished, every success overshadowed by whatever Sofia was doing. When I got into MIT for computer science with a full scholarship, the dinner conversation lasted exactly 10 minutes before pivoting to Sofia's engagement to Marcus, a lawyer from a wealthy Boston family. "Can you believe it, Grace?" my mother had gushed, barely looking at the MIT acceptance letter I'd placed on the table. "Your sister is marrying into the Ashford family. Do you know what this means for our social standing?" The engagement fell through 6 months later when Marcus cheated on Sofia with a paralegal from his firm, but by then nobody remembered my acceptance to MIT anyway. I'd moved to Boston, thrown myself into my studies, and built a life separate from my family's drama. College was the first time I felt like I could breathe. At MIT, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence and innovation, who didn't care about social hierarchies or family politics. I met Cynthia during freshman orientation, both of us awkward engineering students who bonded over our shared love of bad science fiction movies and our tendency to pull all-nighters debugging code. She became the sister I never had, loyal and supportive in ways Sofia never was. After graduation, I'd stayed in the tech industry, working for various startups and consulting firms, building my expertise in artificial intelligence and machine learning. 3 years ago, I'd had the breakthrough that led to my diagnostic algorithm. I'd been working on a project for a hospital system trying to improve their patient data management when I realized that the real problem wasn't data storage, but data interpretation. Doctors were drowning in information but couldn't process it fast enough to catch diseases in their early stages. That's when the idea hit me. What if I could build an AI system that could analyze patient data in real time, cross-referencing symptoms, lab results, genetic markers, and medical history to identify patterns that human doctors might miss? Not to replace doctors, but to augment their capabilities, to give them a tool that could flag potential issues before they became critical. I'd spent 3 years developing the algorithm, working nights and weekends, pouring every bit of my knowledge and creativity into the project. I'd tested it on anonymized patient data, refined it, improved it until it was achieving diagnostic accuracy rates that were revolutionary. Early-stage cancer detection, rare disease identification, even predictive analysis for conditions like heart disease and stroke. The algorithm was a game changer. And now, standing outside my parents' house with the signed contract in my portfolio, I was ready to share my success. Ready to finally get the recognition I'd always craved from my family. I walked into the house, and immediately the atmosphere felt wrong. It wasn't the celebratory energy I'd expected for Sofia's promotion dinner. The air was heavy with tension, thick enough to choke on. Mom was in the kitchen, barely looking up as I entered. Her hands moved mechanically over vegetables. She was chopping her shoulders stiff with some unnamed stress. Dad was in his study door, half closed, his voice low and urgent on the phone. I caught fragments of conversation that sounded like they were about money, about investments, about something not going according to plan. Sofia was sprawling on the living room couch, scrolling through her phone with that familiar look of bored superiority on her face. She was wearing an expensive designer dress, her hair professionally styled, her makeup perfect. She looked every inch the successful executive, but there was something off about her expression, a tightness around her eyes that suggested things weren't as perfect as they appeared. "Hey everyone," I said, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice despite the weird atmosphere. "Congratulations on the promotion, Soph." Sofia glanced up, her eyes cold and assessing. She looked me up and down, taking in my casual jeans and sweater, and I could see the judgment in her gaze. "Thanks. Nice of you to dress up for the occasion." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my composure. I was used to Sofia's little digs, the constant low-level criticism that was designed to make me feel inadequate without being obvious enough to call out. "I brought something to share. Big news from my end, too." Oh, Sofia's tone was dripping with false interest. "Let me guess. Another participation trophy from that little tech startup you work for. Actually, I signed a contract with MedTech Solutions. $10 million for my AI diagnostic algorithm. It's going to revolutionize early disease detection in hospitals across the country." The room went silent. The sound of Mom's knife against the cutting board stopped abruptly. I heard Dad's footsteps as he emerged from his study, phone call apparently forgotten. Sofia sat up slowly, and for just a moment I saw something flash across her face. Not pride. Not happiness. Something darker, something that made my stomach twist with unease. 10 million, Dad said, his voice carefully neutral. "That's quite a sum." "It is," I agreed, pulling the contract from my portfolio. 3 years of work finally paying off. The algorithm uses advanced machine learning to analyze patient data and identify disease markers that traditional diagnostic methods miss. MedTech thinks it could save thousands of lives. Mom finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw something like pride in her eyes. But then Sofia stood up, walking toward me with deliberate steps, and the moment shattered. "Your algorithm," Sofia said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You think you did this all by yourself? Let me ask you something, Grace. Who do you think paved the way for you? Who managed the relationships, networked with the right people, made sure the tech industry in Denver took you seriously?" I stared at her, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? I developed this from scratch. Every line of code, every diagnostic parameter, every machine learning model. This is my work, Sofia." She laughed, a harsh sound that had no humor in it. "You're so naive. You always have been. You think you're some kind of genius working away in your little apartment, and suddenly you have a breakthrough. That's not how the world works, Grace. Success requires connections, relationships, strategic positioning. All things I've been building while you've been playing with your computer. Sofia, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Are you claiming you had something to do with my algorithm? Because you don't know the first thing about artificial intelligence or machine learning." Her face flushed with anger, and I saw Dad shift uncomfortably, exchanging a glance with Mom that I couldn't interpret. "I'm saying that you wouldn't have gotten anywhere without the groundwork people like me laid. Without the reputation our family has built in this city. Without the doors I opened for you, whether you knew it or not. What doors I demanded, my own anger starting to rise. I got into MIT on my own merit. I built my career on my own skills. I developed this algorithm through my own hard work and intelligence. You had nothing to do with any of it." "Girls, please," Mom interjected weakly, but there was no real conviction in her voice. She'd never stood up to Sofia, never defended me when it mattered. She was too invested in maintaining peace, in keeping Sofia happy, to ever take my side. "No, Mom, she needs to hear this," Sofia continued, her voice rising with each word. "Grace has always been the one who gets lucky, who stumbles into things and then acts like she earned it. Meanwhile, I work myself to the bone, building real relationships, managing complex projects with actual stakes, dealing with corporate politics that would eat someone like her alive. And what? She writes some code and suddenly she's worth $10 million. It's not fair." The jealousy was so naked, so raw, that it actually shocked me. I'd always known Sofia resented me on some level, but I'd convinced myself it was normal sibling rivalry, the kind of competition that existed in most families. This was different. This was hatred. This was rage that had been festering for years, barely contained beneath a veneer of superiority. Life isn't about fair, Sophia, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. It's about what you create, what you contribute. I'm sorry if you feel like I don't deserve this, but I do. I worked for it. I earned it. You earned it. Sophia's voice was nearly a shriek now, and I saw Dad finally step forward, his hand raised as if to calm her down. But she shook him off, her eyes blazing with fury. You don't know what earning something means. You've coasted your whole life on being the smart one, the special one, poor little Grace who needs everyone's sympathy. That's rich coming from you, I shot back, my own control starting to slip. You've been the golden child since the day I was born. Everything I've ever done has been compared to you and found wanting. Do you know what it's like to bring home straight A's and have Mom ask why I couldn't be more well-rounded like you? To win a national coding competition and have Dad ask why I couldn't get a normal job like you. I've lived in your shadow my entire life, Sophia. This algorithm, this contract, it's the first thing that's ever been truly mine. The first time I've ever achieved something that you couldn't take credit for or diminish. And you can't stand it. The truth hung in the air between us, raw and undeniable. Sophia's face went through a rapid series of expressions, shock, rage, something that might have been shame before settling into cold fury. You think this is yours, she said, her voice low and dangerous. You think you get to have something I don't. You think you get to be better than me? I never said I was better than you. I just want to be recognized for what I've accomplished. Well, congratulations, Sophia spat. You got your recognition. You got your big contract. You got your moment in the Sunday. I hope it was worth it. Something about the way she said it made my blood run cold. There was a promise in those words, a threat barely concealed. But before I could respond, she turned and walked toward the stairs, her designer heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. I looked at my parents, hoping for some kind of support, some acknowledgement of what had just happened. Dad avoided my eyes, suddenly very interested in his phone. Mom turned back to her vegetables, her shoulders hunched in a way that suggested she wanted to pretend the entire confrontation hadn't occurred. I'm going to talk to her, I said, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe because I still believed, despite everything, that we could find some common ground. That I could make Sophia understand that her success and mine weren't mutually exclusive. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, my footsteps echoing in the high-ceilinged hallway. I'd grown up in this house, knew every creaky floorboard, every family photo on the wall documenting Sophia's achievements while mine were relegated to a small corner shelf. The master suite where my parents slept took up half the floor. Sophia's old room, now a guest suite, was on the left. My old room had been converted into a home gym years ago. Sophia was standing at the top of the stairs, staring out the large window that overlooked the backyard. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the perfectly landscaped garden below. She didn't turn when I approached, but I could see her reflection in the glass, her expression hard and distant. Soph, I don't want to fight, I said, keeping my voice gentle. I know this is a weird time for both of us. Your promotion is a big deal, and my contract is a big deal. We can both celebrate our successes. They don't have to compete. She laughed, but it was a bitter, hollow sound. You really don't get it, do you? You never have. Get what? She turned to face me, and I was startled by the raw emotion in her eyes. Do you know what it's like to be the first child? The one who's supposed to set the example, pave the way, be perfect all the time. I've been performing for our parents my entire life, Grace. Every achievement, every success it was, all to maintain their approval to be the daughter they wanted me to be. I never asked you to do that, I said quietly. That was your choice. Was it? She took a step closer, and I found myself backing up slightly, sensing danger in her posture. Or was it the only role available to me? You got to be the smart one, the talented one, the one with potential. I had to be the successful one, the perfect one, the one who made the family look good. Do you know how exhausting that is? How much pressure there is to maintain that image? Sophia, I'm sorry you felt that pressure, but that doesn't give you the right to diminish what I've accomplished. Accomplished, she repeated, her voice mocking. You wrote some code. Big deal. I've been managing teams of 50 people, overseeing multi-million-dollar projects, navigating corporate politics that would destroy you. But do they care? Do Mom and Dad care about any of that? They've always cared about you more than me, I said, and I couldn't keep the hurt out of my voice. You're the one they brag about to their friends. You're the one whose photos are all over the house. I've been the afterthought my entire life. Because you refused to play the game, Sophia shouted, and I saw several neighbors' lights flick on across the street, drawn by the commotion. You refuse to network, to socialize, to do any of the things that actually matter in the real world. You just locked yourself away with your computers and expected success to come to you. Success did come to me, Sofia. Because I'm good at what I do. Because I worked hard and created something valuable. Why is that so threatening to you? Because it proves that everything I've done, every sacrifice I've made, every compromise I've accepted, it was all for nothing. Her voice cracked and I saw tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. I've given up everything to be the perfect daughter, the perfect professional, the perfect representation of this family. And you just do whatever you want and you still get rewarded. You still get the big contract, the recognition, the validation. For a moment I felt a surge of sympathy for my sister. I could see the pain beneath her anger, the years of pressure and expectation that had twisted her into someone I barely recognized. Sof, it doesn't have to be like this. We can both be successful. We can both be happy. Our achievements don't cancel each other out. She wiped her tears away, roughly smearing her mascara. When she looked at me again, the vulnerability was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. You're right. They don't cancel each other out. But one of us is going to come out on top, and it's not going to be you. What does that mean? It means that I've spent my entire life building the foundation for success, and I'm not going to let you waltz in and take it all. That contract, that algorithm, it should be mine. I felt a chill run down my spine. The algorithm is mine, Sofia. I created it. You can't just claim it, can't I? She smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on a human face. You'd be surprised what I can do when I set my mind to it, little sister. You've always underestimated me. That's been your biggest mistake. Sofia, what are you planning? Nothing you need to worry about, she said, her voice returning to that false sweetness that I'd heard her use with clients and colleagues. Just remember, Grace. In this family, there's only room for one success story. And I've been writing mine a lot longer than you have. She turned to walk back down the hallway toward the guest suite, dismissing me, as if I were nothing more than an annoying interruption to her evening. The casual cruelty of it, the complete lack of sisterly affection or even basic respect, it broke something inside me. I'm not going to stand here and defend myself to you, I called after her. I came here to share good news with my family. I thought maybe just once you could be happy for me. But I see now that was naive. You're never going to be happy for me, Sofia. Because you don't actually care about me at all. She paused at the doorway to the guest suite, her hand on the knob, and looked back at me over her shoulder. You're finally starting to understand. Good. That will make what comes next easier. What comes next? What are you talking about? But she just shook her head, a small, cruel smile playing at her lips. Go home, Grace. Enjoy your moment of glory while it lasts. Because I promise you it won't last long. She disappeared into the room, closing the door with a soft click that somehow felt more ominous than if she'd slammed it. I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of what had just happened. It felt like a threat, but it was too vague to act on. What could Sofia possibly do? The contract was signed. The algorithm was mine. There was nothing she could take from me. I should have known better. I walked back downstairs, feeling shaken and confused. My parents were in the kitchen now, Dad pouring himself a generous glass of scotch while Mom pretended to be focused on dinner preparations. They both looked up when I entered, and I saw guilt flash across both their faces before they schooled their expressions into careful neutrality. I think I'm going to head out, I said quietly. This clearly isn't the right time for a celebration. Grace, honey, don't be dramatic, Mom said, her voice taking on that placating tone I'd heard my entire childhood. Sisters fight. It's normal. You two will work it out. This wasn't a fight, Mom. Sofia basically told me she's going to steal my success somehow. And you're just going to pretend that's normal sibling rivalry, Dad set his glass down with more force than necessary. Grace, you're being paranoid. Sofia was upset about the timing, that's all. She worked hard for this promotion, and you showing up with your contract overshadowed her moment. You could have been more sensitive to that. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. So this is my fault. I'm supposed to hide my achievements to make Sofia feel better. That's not what I said, Dad replied, but there was no conviction in his voice. I just think you need to be more aware of how your actions affect others. My actions? What about Sofia's actions? What about the way she's treated me my entire life? What about the constant competition, the put-downs, the way she makes everything about her? That's enough, Mom said sharply, and I saw real anger flash in her eyes for the first time. Sofia has always been there for this family. She's always put us first. She's the reason we have the social standing, we do the connections, the reputation. You can't just show up after years of doing your own thing and expect us to drop everything for you. The words hit me like physical blows. This was it. This was the truth I'd been avoiding my entire life. I wasn't the overlooked child, the underappreciated daughter. I was the unwanted one. The one they tolerated, but never truly valued. Sofia was their daughter. I was just the spare. I see, I said quietly, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. Thank you for finally being honest about how you feel. Grace, don't be like that, Dad said, but I was already walking toward the door. We love you. We're proud of you. But you have to understand, I understand perfectly, I said, grabbing my portfolio from where I'd set it down by the entrance. I understand that no matter what I achieve, no matter how hard I work, I'm never going to be enough for you. Because being enough would require me to be Sofia. And I'm not her. I never will be. Grace Harper, you stop right there, Mom commanded, her voice sharp with authority. Don't you walk out of this house like some victim. We've given you every opportunity, every advantage. If you chose to pursue some niche career instead of building real relationships, real capital, that's on you. I turned back to face her and I saw her flinch at whatever expression was on my face. Every opportunity. You converted my childhood bedroom into a gym, Mom. You took down my awards to make room for Sofia's. You forgot my college graduation because Sofia had a work event the same weekend. Every opportunity you gave me came with the caveat that it shouldn't interfere with Sofia's life, Sofia's needs, Sofia's image. So don't stand there and tell me you treated us equally. We both know that's a lie. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the truth of my words hitting them, could see the guilt and shame warring with their ingrained need to defend Sofia. But ultimately, as always, Sofia won. If that's how you feel, maybe you should leave, Dad said finally, his voice cold and distant. Come back when you're ready to be part of this family instead of attacking it. I laughed, and it was a broken, bitter sound. I've been trying to be part of this family my entire life. The problem is you never wanted me in it. Not really. Not unless I was willing to play second fiddle to Sofia forever. I walked out of that house, my childhood home, and I felt something break inside me. It wasn't just disappointment or hurt. It was the death of hope, the final understanding that I would never have the family I'd always wanted. That I needed to stop trying to earn their love and start building a life that didn't require their approval. I sat in my car in their driveway for a long time, crying until I couldn't cry anymore. The contract sat on the passenger seat, a symbol of my greatest professional achievement, and all I could think about was how hollow it felt without my family's genuine happiness. How much it hurt to know that my success was a threat to them rather than a source of pride. Finally, I drove home, my mind spinning with Sofia's ominous warnings and my parents' betrayal. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming, that Sofia's threats weren't empty. But I had no idea what she could actually do. The contract was mine. The algorithm was mine. Everything was documented, copyrighted, legally protected. I spent the next week trying to focus on work, on the excitement of the medtech partnership, on building the future I'd worked so hard for. But Sofia's words haunted me, playing on repeat in my mind. You'd be surprised what I can do when I set my mind to it. What did that mean? What was she planning? I got my answer 2 weeks later in the worst possible way. It was a Tuesday evening around 8 p.m. I was working late at the office, refining some of the algorithm's diagnostic parameters for a specific type of cancer detection. My team had gone home hours ago, but I was in the zone, that flow state where time disappears and the only thing that exists is the code and the problem you're solving. My phone rang, shattering my concentration. Sofia's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether to answer. We hadn't spoken since that disastrous dinner 2 weeks ago, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Grace. Her voice was strange, tight, and strained in a way I'd never heard before. I need to talk to you. Can you come to the house? To Mom and Dad's. Why would I do that? We don't have anything to say to each other. Please. The word sounded like it was physically painful for her to say. It's important. It's about Mom and Dad. They need us both there. Something in her tone made my stomach clench with anxiety. What's wrong? Are they okay? Just come. Please. I'm here now, and I need you to come. She hung up before I could ask any more questions. I sat there staring at my phone, every instinct telling me this was a trap. But what if something really was wrong with our parents? What if this was an emergency and I ignored it out of spite? I grabbed my jacket and headed out, the evening air cold against my face as I walked to my car. The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes, and with every mile, my sense of dread grew stronger. Something was very wrong. I could feel it in my bones. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Sofia's Mercedes parked at an odd angle as if she'd arrived in a hurry. The house was dark except for a single light in the upstairs hallway. No lights in the kitchen or living room, which was unusual for this time of evening. My parents were creatures of habit, always in the living room watching television by 8 p.m. I got out of my car slowly, my hand reaching for my phone. Maybe I should call first, make sure everything was okay before going in. But then the front door opened and Sofia appeared silhouetted against the dim hallway light behind her. Finally, she said, and something about her voice made every alarm bell in my head start ringing. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. Where are Mom and Dad? I asked, staying by my car. You said this was about them. They're not here, Sofia said, and she smiled. It was the same terrifying smile I'd seen 2 weeks ago, cold and calculating and completely devoid of warmth. I lied. My hand tightened on my phone. Then I'm leaving. Don't you want to know why I called you here? She took a step toward me, then another, moving with deliberate slowness down the front steps. Don't you want to hear about the opportunity I'm offering you? I don't want anything from you, Sofia. Not even a chance to make this easier on both of us. She was closer now, close enough that I could see her eyes, and there was something manic in them, something unhinged. I've been thinking about what you said, about how we can both be successful. And you're right. We can. But we need to do it my way. I'm not interested in doing anything your way. You will be when you hear what I have to say. She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen a few times before holding it up for me to see. Do you recognize this? I squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was looking at in the dim light. It appeared to be an email chain, but I couldn't read the details from this distance. What is that? These are emails between you and Mark Chen from your development team. Emails where you discuss cutting corners in the algorithm's testing phase. Where you admit that some of the diagnostic accuracy rates you reported to MedTech were inflated. Where you talk about falsifying data to make the algorithm look better than it actually is. My blood ran cold. That's not possible. I never wrote those emails. I never cut corners or falsified anything. Of course you didn't, Sofia said, her smile widening. But these emails exist. They have your email address, your digital signature, everything. And Mark will confirm that you sent them. He's already agreed to testify if necessary. Mark would never do that. He knows those emails are fake. Mark has $250,000 in gambling debts, Sofia said calmly. And I've offered to pay them off in exchange for his cooperation, plus another $50,000 for his trouble. Do you really think he's going to choose loyalty to you over financial survival? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This was what she'd been planning. This was her revenge. You're going to destroy my credibility. Ruin my contract. Not if you're smart, Sofia said. I'm offering you a deal, Grace. Sign over the rights to the algorithm to me. Let me take over the contract with MedTech. I'll position myself as the lead developer, the true visionary behind the project, and you can be my technical support. You'll still get a cut, maybe 10%, which is generous considering you'll be working for me. And in exchange, these emails disappear. Mark keeps his mouth shut. Your reputation stays intact. That's insane, I said, my voice shaking with rage. That algorithm is mine. I'm not signing it over to you. Then I'll release these emails to MedTech, to the press, to every tech blog and industry publication I can find. I'll destroy your reputation so thoroughly that you'll never work in this field again. And when MedTech sues you for fraud, which they will, you'll spend years in legal battles that will bankrupt you. Is that really what you want? I stared at my sister, this person I'd grown up with, shared a home with, and I felt like I was seeing a stranger. A monster wearing Sofia's face. Why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you to deserve this? You existed, she said simply. You were always there, always the smart one, the special one, the one with potential. Do you know what it's like to live in the shadow of someone younger than you? To know that no matter what you achieve, people are always going to compare you to your genius little sister. I've hated you since the day you were born, Grace. And now, I finally have the power to do something about it. The admission was so brutal, so honest, that for a moment I couldn't process it. My sister had hated me my entire life. Not resented me, not been jealous of me. Hated me. And our parents had either not noticed or not cared enough to stop it. I'm not signing anything, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. You can release whatever fake emails you want. The truth will come out. MedTech has their own technical team. They'll review the algorithm's code, see that everything is legitimate. Your scheme will fall apart. Will it? Sophia tilted her head, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. Because I've already started planting seeds of doubt. I've been having lunches with people at MedTech, mentioning how concerned I am about my sister's mental health, how the pressure of the contract has been affecting her. I've shared stories about your history of anxiety, your tendency to exaggerate your achievements, your difficulty working with teams. When those emails surface, it won't seem out of character. It will seem like confirmation of everything I've been carefully suggesting. She'd thought of everything. Every angle, every possible defense I might mount. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment plan. She'd been building toward this for weeks, maybe longer. And I'd been completely blind to it. You're going to lose, Sophia, I said, forcing confidence into my voice that I didn't feel. Truth has a way of coming out. Does it? She laughed, that harsh sound I'd come to despise. Look around, Grace. Look at the world we live in. Truth doesn't matter. Perception matters. And I'm very good at managing perception. Now, are you going to be smart about this and take my deal? Or are you going to be stubborn and watch everything you've built crumble? I wanted to cave. God, I wanted to take the easy path sign over the algorithm, accept the 10% and avoid the coming storm. But something in me, some core of steel I didn't know I possessed, refused to bend. I'm going home, I said, turning back toward my car. And I'm calling my lawyer. If you want to go to war, Sophia, then we'll go to war. But I'm not giving you my life's work without a fight. Grace, wait. For the first time, I heard something like panic in her voice. Don't be stupid about this. You can't win. I have resources, connections, money. What do you have? I stopped at my car door, looking back at her. She was standing in the middle of the driveway, and in the harsh light from the street lamps, she looked smaller than I remembered. Desperata even. I have the truth, I said. And that's worth more than all your money and connections combined. I got in my car and drove away, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. In my rearview mirror, I could see Sophia standing there watching me go, and the look on her face was one of pure hatred. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Cynthia's apartment, banging on her door until she answered, bleary-eyed and confused. When she saw my face, saw the state I was in, she immediately pulled me inside. What happened? She demanded, guiding me to her couch. I told her everything. The fake emails, Mark's betrayal, Sophia's threats, the impossible position I was in. Cynthia listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every word. That psychopath, she said when I finished. She's actually going to try to steal your algorithm. She already has stolen it, or she's well on her way, I said, wiping tears from my face. She's been planning this for weeks, Sin. Planting seeds, building a narrative. By the time those fake emails come out, everyone will be primed to believe them. Then we need to get ahead of it, Cynthia said firmly. We need evidence of what she's doing, documentation of her threats. Did you record the conversation? No, I didn't think to. Okay, that's fine. We'll figure it out. But Grace, you need a lawyer. Like immediately. Someone who specializes in this kind of corporate fraud. I know. I'll start looking tomorrow. No, I'll start looking tonight, Cynthia corrected. You need to rest. You look like you're about to collapse. She was right. The adrenaline that had been sustaining me was fading, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion and a throbbing headache. Cynthia made up her guest bed, gave me some pajamas, and I fell asleep almost instantly, too drained to even process the nightmare my life had become. The next morning, Cynthia woke me with coffee and a list of lawyers she'd researched. At the top of the list was Daniel Morrison, a trial attorney with a reputation for taking on complex intellectual property cases and winning. His consultation fee was expensive, but Cynthia insisted he was worth it. I called his office as soon as they opened, explaining the situation in broad strokes. His assistant said he was booked solid for the next month, but when I mentioned Sophia's name and the scale of the fraud, she put me on hold. 2 minutes later, Daniel himself was on the line. Miss Harper, this is Daniel Morrison. My assistant says you're dealing with some significant fraud allegations. Tell me more. I recounted the entire story from Sophia's jealousy to her elaborate scheme to steal my algorithm. Daniel asked pointed questions, taking notes, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind. This is serious, he said when I finished. If what you're telling me is true, your sister is committing multiple federal crimes. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly extortion. But here's the problem, you need evidence. Hard evidence, not just your word against hers. I know. That's why I need your help. I can help, but it's going to be expensive. Cases like this can drag on for months, sometimes years. We're talking hundreds of thousands in legal fees. My stomach sank. I had money from my consulting work, but not that kind of money. I'll figure it out. Whatever it costs, good. Come to my office this afternoon. We'll draw up a retainer agreement and start building your defense. And Miss Harper, don't sign anything. Don't talk to your sister again without recording the conversation, and don't trust anyone at your company until we figure out who else might be compromised. I agreed, hanging up with a sense of grim determination. This was really happening. I was going to war with my own sister. But I didn't make it to Daniel's office that afternoon. Because before I could even leave Cynthia's apartment, my life took another catastrophic turn. I was sitting at Cynthia's kitchen table reviewing documents related to the algorithm's development when my phone rang. Sofia's name flashed on the screen again, and I almost didn't answer. But Daniel's advice echoed in my mind: record everything, so I set up Cynthia's tablet to record audio and answered on speaker. What do you want, Sofia? Grace, I need you to come to the house again. Right now. Her voice was different this time, urgent and almost afraid. I'm not falling for that again. If you want to talk, we can do it with lawyers present. Grace, please. It's Mom and Dad this time. For real. Dad had a heart attack. He's at Street Luke's hospital. Mom is hysterical. I need you here. My heart stopped. What? When an hour ago. He's in surgery now. Grace, I know you hate me, but this is real. I swear. Call the hospital if you don't believe me. I did call, and the nurse confirmed that Robert Harper had indeed been admitted with a cardiac event and was currently in surgery. I grabbed my keys, told Cynthia where I was going, and raced to the hospital. The emergency room was chaos, people everywhere, phones ringing, the smell of antiseptic and fear thick in the air. I found Sofia and my mother in a private waiting room, Mom's face swollen from crying, Sofia pacing like a caged animal. Grace, Mom, rushed to me, throwing her arms around me in a hug that felt both desperate and foreign. She'd never been physically affectionate with me. Thank God you're here. The doctors said it was a massive heart attack. They don't know if he's going to make it. I held her, feeling awkward and unsure, while Sofia watched us with an unreadable expression. For a brief moment, the antagonism between us seemed to fade, replaced by the shared fear of losing our father. We waited for 3 hours. The surgery took longer than expected, complications upon complications. Every time a doctor came out to update another family, we all tensed, wondering if the news was about Dad. Finally, a surgeon in green scrubs appeared, calling our name. We rushed over, and I could see from his expression that the news wasn't good. Mr. Harper is out of surgery, he said, his voice professionally gentle. We've managed to stabilize him, but the damage to his heart was extensive. He's in critical condition. The next 48 hours will be crucial. But he's going to survive, Mom asked, her voice breaking. We're doing everything we can, Mrs. Harper. But I won't lie to you. It's touch and go right now. They let us see him briefly, one at a time. Mom went first, coming back 15 minutes later looking like she'd aged 10 years. Sofia went next, staying only 5 minutes before emerging with red eyes. Then it was my turn. I walked into the ICU past rows of beds with critically ill patients until I found Dad's bay. He looked so small in that hospital bed, hooked up to what seemed like dozens of machines, his skin gray and waxy under the fluorescent lights. I pulled up a chair and took his hand, careful of the IV line. Hey, Dad. It's Grace. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here. And I'm going to be here okay. Whatever else is happening, whatever problems we've had, I'm not going anywhere. His hand didn't squeeze mine back. There was no sign that he heard me. But I sat there for my allotted 15 minutes holding his hand and praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in to let him survive this. When I came out, a social worker was talking to Mom and Sofia about next steps, about patient care plans and advanced directives. The reality of the situation was sinking in. My father might die, and if he didn't, he was going to need extensive care and rehabilitation. Over the next 3 days, our family maintained a vigil at the hospital. Dad remained in critical condition, his status fluctuating hour by hour. Mom practically lived in the waiting room, refusing to go home. Sofia and I took turns keeping her company, bringing her food, trying to keep her spirits up. The truce between Sofia and me was fragile, maintained only by the shared crisis. We didn't talk about the algorithm, about her threats, about anything beyond Dad's condition. But I could feel the tension between us, the unspoken acknowledgement that our war had only been temporarily suspended. On the 4th day, Dad finally opened his eyes. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that he was out of immediate danger, though he'd need months of recovery. Mom cried tears of relief, and for a moment we were just a family again, united in gratitude that Dad had survived. But the moment couldn't last. As Dad began to recover, as the immediate crisis passed, the reality of our situation came flooding back. Sofia and I still had unfinished business. The threat of her false emails still hung over my head, and I could see in her eyes that she hadn't forgotten or forgiven my refusal to cooperate. A week after Dad's heart attack, when he was stable enough to be moved from ICU to a regular room, Sofia cornered me in the hospital cafeteria. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I have nothing to say to you that won't be said through my lawyer," I replied, not bothering to hide my hostility. "This isn't about the algorithm. It's about Dad. His medical bills are going to be astronomical, Grace. Mom doesn't have that kind of money, not with Dad's business struggling the way it has been. I hadn't known Dad's business was struggling, but it didn't surprise me. He owned a mid-sized consulting firm that had been slowly losing clients to bigger competitors. What does that have to do with me, your $10 million contract? I know you haven't spent it yet. Mom and Dad need help, Grace. Are you really going to let pride get in the way of helping them?" The audacity of her request left me momentarily speechless. "You tried to steal my algorithm a week ago, and now you want me to use the money from it to pay Dad's medical bills. I'm putting our issues aside for the family. Can't you do the same?" "No," I said flatly. "Because you won't let them go. The second I transfer any money, you'll find a way to use it against me. You'll claim I'm bribing the family or trying to buy their loyalty. This is just another manipulation, Sofia." Her mask of concern slipped, revealing the anger beneath. "Fine. Be selfish. But when Dad can't afford his medication, when Mom loses their house to medical debt, remember that you had the power to help and chose not to." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there with a sick feeling in my stomach. Was I being selfish? Was I so caught up in my war with Sofia that I was willing to let my parents suffer? But then I remembered the fake emails, Mark's betrayal, Sofia's admission that she'd hated me my entire life. This wasn't about helping family. This was about Sofia finding another lever to manipulate me with, and I couldn't let her win. I called Daniel Morrison from the hospital parking lot, filling him in on the latest developments. "She's trying to create sympathy," Daniel said after I finished. "Painting you as the wealthy, heartless daughter who won't help her struggling parents. It's a classic manipulation tactic. Don't fall for it. But what if my parents really do need help? Then you can help them directly through a trust or medical fund that Sofia can't access. But don't let her guilt you into handing over money that she'll find a way to claim as part of her case against you." He was right. I knew he was right. But the guilt was still there, gnawing at me, making me question every decision. 2 weeks after Dad's heart attack, he was finally discharged from the hospital. The medical bills were indeed staggering, over $300,000, even with insurance. Mom looked exhausted and overwhelmed, and I could see the financial stress weighing on her. Against Daniel's advice, I set up a medical trust, transferring $500,000 into it with strict provisions that it could only be used for Dad's medical care and recovery. Sofia couldn't touch it, couldn't claim it, couldn't use it as leverage, but it would ensure my parents were taken care of. When I told them about the trust, Mom cried and thanked me. Dad, still weak but improving, squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you, sweetheart." Sofia said nothing, but the look she gave me was pure venom. The trust bought me some goodwill with my parents, but it didn't change the fundamental dynamics of our family. Sofia was still the golden child, and I was still the outsider. The only difference was now they needed my money, which gave me a form of power I'd never had before. But that power came at a cost. Because Sofia's hatred of me had only intensified, and she was more determined than ever to destroy me. A month after Dad's heart attack, the fake emails surfaced. They appeared in my inbox at work, forwarded from what looked like Mark Chen's account with a note attached. "Grace, I can't keep lying about this. These emails need to be disclosed to MedTech." "I'm sorry." I called Mark immediately, but his number went straight to voicemail. I tried his personal email, his social media accounts, everything. He'd disappeared. Daniel sprang into action, filing an emergency motion to prevent MedTech from acting on the fraudulent emails. But the damage was done. The emails had also been leaked to several tech blogs, and within hours, my name was trending on Twitter for all the wrong reasons. Software engineer accused of falsifying AI diagnostic data. MedTech's $10 million mistake. Grace Harper, genius or fraud? The articles were brutal, dissecting my career, questioning my achievements, painting me as a con artist who'd manipulated my way to success. And in every article, there were quotes from anonymous sources, close to the situation, sources I knew were Sofia, talking about concerns they'd had about my work ethic, my attention to detail, my mental stability. My phone blew up with messages from colleagues, from friends, from reporters wanting a statement. MedTech's legal team sent a tersely worded letter demanding an explanation and threatening to void the contract pending investigation. I felt like I was drowning, like no matter how hard I fought, the water kept rising, pulling me under. This was what Sofia wanted, to destroy me so thoroughly that even if I eventually proved my innocence, the damage to my reputation would be irreparable. Daniel filed a defamation lawsuit against Sofia Mark Chen and anyone else we could prove was involved in the conspiracy. But lawsuits take time, and in the meantime, my life was falling apart. I couldn't go into my office without facing suspicious looks and whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. My boss James called me into his office and suggested I take a leave of absence until the situation was resolved. It was presented as a suggestion, but we both knew it was an order. I spent my days at Cynthia's apartment, alternating between paralyzing anxiety and furious anger. Daniel and his team were working around the clock, but they kept running into roadblocks. Mark Chen had left the country, traveling to Malaysia, where extradition would be difficult. The server logs that would have proven the emails were fabricated had been mysteriously wiped. Sofia's lawyer claimed she knew nothing about any fake emails, that she was just as shocked as everyone else. It was a masterpiece of deception, and I was losing. Then, 3 weeks into the nightmare, I got a call that would change everything. "Miss Harper, this is Dr. Eleanor Price. I'm a physician at Luke's hospital. I treated your father during his cardiac event. Yes, I remember you, Dr. Price. Is everything okay with my father? Your father is fine. But I'm calling about something else. Something I need to discuss with you in person. Can you come to my office today?" There was something in her tone, an urgency mixed with caution, that made my heart race. "Of course. When? As soon as possible. And Miss Harper, come alone. Don't tell anyone about this conversation." I drove to in the Pheasant. "Don't tell anyone about this conversation." Luke's hospital in a daze, my mind spinning with possibilities. What could Dr. Price want to tell me that required such secrecy? Her office was small and cluttered, medical journals stacked on every surface, diplomas and certifications covering the walls. She was a woman in her early 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of no-nonsense competence. "Thank you for coming, Grace." "May I call you Grace?" "Of course." She gestured for me to sit, then closed her office door and turned to face me with an expression of barely contained anger. "I'm going to tell you something that could cost me my medical license if anyone finds out I shared it with you. But I can't stay silent. What's being done to you is wrong, and I have information that can help you fight back." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear her over the rush of blood in my ears. "What information?" "Your father's heart attack wasn't entirely natural. When he came in, I ran the standard toxicology screening we do for all cardiac patients. The results showed elevated levels of a medication called digoxin. It's a heart medication that in high doses can induce arrhythmia and cardiac events. Your father wasn't prescribed digoxin. He shouldn't have had any in his system." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "Are you telling me someone poisoned my father?" "I'm telling you that the levels in his blood suggest deliberate administration, not accidental ingestion." I reported it to hospital administration, and they immediately shut down the investigation. Someone with influence made sure this didn't become a police matter. But I kept copies of the lab results because I knew something was wrong. Who would do that? Who would want to hurt my father, Doctor? Price pulled out a file folder, opening it to reveal not just the toxicology report, but also visitor logs from the days before Dad's heart attack. She pointed to one entry in particular. "Your sister, Sofia Harper, visited your father at his home the day before the cardiac event. According to your mother's statement, she brought him medication samples that she claimed would help with his high blood pressure. Natural supplements, she called them." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Sofia had poisoned our father. Not enough to kill him, but enough to send him to the hospital to create a crisis that would distract me, manipulate me, put me in a position where I'd be forced to help financially. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because I've been following your case in the news. I saw the articles about the alleged fraud, and I recognized your sister's name from the visitor logs. When I put it together, when I realized she might be behind both your father's cardiac event and your current legal troubles, I knew I had to say something. What she's doing to you, it's not just wrong. It's criminal. Can I use this?" "The toxicology report, the visitor logs. Yes, but you need to be careful. Hospital administration made it very clear that this information is not to be shared. They were paid off or pressured or both. If they know I gave you this, I'll lose my job and possibly face legal action. So you need to make sure that when you use it to end her. No half measures, no warnings. Take her down completely, or don't use it at all." I looked at this brave woman who was risking everything to help me, and I felt something shift inside me. The fear and doubt that had been consuming me burned away, replaced by cold, focused determination. "I'll take her down," I said. "I promise you that, Doctor." Price handed me copies of everything: the toxicology report, the visitor logs, even her own medical notes documenting her suspicions. Good. Because someone needs to stop her before she does something even worse. I left the hospital with a folder full of explosive evidence, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I drove straight to Daniel Morrison's office, bursting in without an appointment. "I have her," I told him, dumping the folder on his desk. "I have everything we need to destroy her." Daniel reviewed the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. When he looked up at me, there was something like admiration in his eyes. "This changes everything. With this evidence, we're not just defending against her fraud allegations. We're going on the offensive. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, extortion. Grace, your sister is going to prison." "Good," I said, and I meant it. "Let's burn her world to the ground." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering. Daniel filed amended complaints adding the attempted murder charges. He subpoenaed hospital records, visitor logs, everything related to Dad's care. He tracked down Mark Chen in Malaysia, and through international legal channels secured his testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence. Mark, it turned out, was eager to talk once he realized how deep Sofia's criminality went. He'd been terrified that her plan to poison Dad was going to come back on him somehow. He provided detailed testimony about Sofia's schemes, including recordings she'd sent him explaining her strategy. In one chilling audio file, Sofia's voice came through clearly. "The key is to make Grace look unstable. First, we create financial pressure with Dad's medical crisis. Then we release the fake emails when she's already stressed and vulnerable. Then when she tries to defend herself, she'll seem paranoid and unhinged. By the time anyone realizes the truth, her reputation will be so damaged that it won't matter." But she'd underestimated me. She'd underestimated Dr. Price. And she'd made the fatal mistake of documenting her crimes. The case exploded into national news. Software engineer's sister accused of attempted murder and fraud. The story had everything: family betrayal, corporate intrigue, attempted murder, and a sophisticated scheme to steal millions of dollars. Suddenly, everyone who'd been so quick to believe I was a fraud was apologizing, backtracking, expressing shock at Sofia's actions. MedTech's CEO personally called to apologize and reinstate the contract with a bonus for the trouble I'd endured. My colleagues at work sent flowers and cards. The tech blogs that had destroyed my reputation published lengthy retractions. But none of it could repair the damage Sofia had done to our family. When Mom found out what Sofia had done to Dad, she collapsed. The betrayal was too much: the realization that her golden child had tried to kill her husband to manipulate her other daughter. Dad, when he was finally told the truth, just looked tired. "I should have seen it," he said quietly from his hospital bed where he was being monitored after the revelation. "All the warning signs were there. The way she treated you, the jealousy, the need to win at any cost. I should have protected you." "You should have," I agreed, because there was no point in lying anymore. "But you chose her instead." "You both did." "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears running down his weathered face. "I'm so sorry, Grace. I wanted to forgive him. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that we could rebuild our relationship. But the words wouldn't come. The damage was too deep, too old, too thoroughly entrenched in every memory of my childhood." Sofia was arrested at her office, led out in handcuffs in front of her colleagues and supervisors. The look on her face as she saw me standing in the lobby, arms crossed, watching her downfall, was one of pure, undiluted hatred. But mixed with the hatred was something else: fear. Because she finally understood that I wasn't the weak little sister she could manipulate and control. The trial was swift. With Mark's testimony, Dr. Price's evidence, and the recordings, Sofia's guilt was undeniable. Her lawyers tried to argue temporary insanity, emotional distress, anything to mitigate the charges. But the jury wasn't sympathetic. They saw what she was: a calculating, cruel woman who'd tried to murder her own father and destroy her sister's life for money and ego. The day of sentencing, I sat in the courtroom, Cynthia on one side and Daniel on the other. My parents were there too, looking diminished and ashamed, unable to meet anyone's eyes. When the judge read the sentence, 7 years in federal prison for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy, Sofia finally broke. She let out a wail that echoed through the courtroom, a sound of such complete despair that part of me, a very small part, felt something like pity. But then I remembered the emails, the poison, the cold calculation of her plan, and the pity evaporated. After the verdict, my parents tried to approach me, both of them crying, reaching out. Grace, please, we're so sorry. We didn't know it would go this far. You have to understand we were just trying to protect, don't I said, my voice cold and final. You had so many chances to protect me. You chose not to. You chose Sofia over me every single time, and when she tried to destroy me completely, you helped her. You don't get to apologize now. You don't get my forgiveness. Grace, we're your parents, my father, said, his voice breaking. You can't just cut us out of your life. I looked at him, this man who'd never stood up for me, who'd watched Sofia bully me for years and done nothing, who'd believed her lies over my truth. You cut me out first. When I was lying in that hospital bed fighting for my life, where were you? You made your choice. Now live with it. I turned and walked away, Daniel and Cynthia flanking me. Behind me, I could hear my mother's sobs, my father's pleas, but I didn't look back. I was done looking back. The legal battle to reclaim my algorithm took another 2 months, but with Sofia's conviction, MedTech had no choice but to return the contract rights to me. They were horrified by the fraud, concerned about their reputation, and eager to make things right. They even increased the contract value to $12 million as compensation for the complications and delays. I could have just taken the money and walked away, started fresh somewhere else. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to turn this nightmare into something meaningful, something that would help others who'd been victimized by the people who should have protected them. I established the Grace Harper Foundation, dedicating $5 million to helping victims of family fraud and abuse. The foundation provides legal assistance, counseling, financial support, and advocacy for people fighting to reclaim what was stolen from them. Because I learned the hard way that you shouldn't have to fight these battles alone, that when your family fails you, you need a system that will stand up for you. The algorithm itself has been incredibly successful. It's now being used in hospitals across the country, helping doctors diagnose diseases earlier, saving lives every day. That was always the point, using technology to help people. Sofia never understood that. For her, it was only ever about money and status and winning. She couldn't comprehend that some things matter more than personal gain. I've built a new life in Denver. I bought a beautiful loft downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows that flood the space with light every morning. I've started dating a fellow engineer I met at a tech conference, someone who respects my work and celebrates my success without feeling threatened by it. I've reconnected with extended family members who'd been kept at arm's length by my parents, cousins, and aunts who reached out after the trial and have become the family I should have had all along. Sometimes I still wake up from nightmares about falling, about Sofia's hands on my shoulders, about that moment of betrayal. But then I remember that I survived. More than survived. I fought back and I won. Not just in court, but in life. I reclaimed my work, my dignity, my sense of self-worth that they'd tried so hard to destroy. Sofia is serving her sentence at a federal correctional facility. She'll be eligible for parole in 5 years if she demonstrates good behavior. I don't waste energy hoping she'll change or find redemption. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to myself, to build a life worth living, to use what happened to me to help others. My parents tried to contact me a few times in the months after the trial. Letters, emails, even showing up at my building once. I have a restraining order now. Maybe that makes me cold or unforgiving, but I don't care. They had my entire childhood and all of my young adult life to be real parents, to see me, to value me. They chose not to. I'm not obligated to give them another chance to hurt me just because we share DNA. The tech industry embraced me in ways I never expected. My story went viral, not as a cautionary tale, but as an inspiration. I've been invited to speak at conferences about resilience, about fighting for your intellectual property, about standing up to family abuse. Every time I tell my story, someone comes up to me afterward with tears in their eyes, thanking me for giving them the courage to stand up to their own toxic families. I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up for you when everything falls apart. It's Cynthia who gave me a place to live and never asked for anything in return. It's Dr. Price who risked professional complications to expose the truth. It's Daniel who believed in me and fought like hell to get me justice. It's the community of survivors I've built through my foundation, people who understand what it's like to be betrayed by the people who should love you most. Looking back now, I can see that Sofia did me a favor in the cruelest way possible. She pushed me off a cliff literally and figuratively, but in doing so, she forced me to learn how to fly. I'm stronger now than I ever was before. I know my worth isn't dependent on my family's approval. I know I can survive the worst kind of betrayal and come out the other side. I know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who don't deserve you. The algorithm I created is saving lives. The foundation I built is helping people reclaim their stolen futures. And I wake up every morning in my sunlit loft surrounded by people who genuinely care about me doing work that matters. Sofia is in prison. My parents lost their golden child, their money, and their reputation. They got exactly what they deserved. I'm not going to lie and say I've completely healed, that there aren't scars, both physical and emotional. My back still aches on cold days. I still have moments of anger when I think about everything they took from me, everything they tried to destroy. But those moments are getting fewer and further between, replaced by gratitude for the life I've built, for the person I've become. If there's anything I want people to take away from my story, it's this: you don't owe loyalty to people who abuse you, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. Walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. Fighting back isn't revenge. It's justice. And building a life without the people who tried to break you isn't cruel. It's the ultimate act of self-love. So to anyone out there who's being told they're not good enough, who's watching their achievements get stolen or minimized, who's being manipulated or abused by people who claim to love them, hear me, you deserve better. You deserve to be celebrated, not torn down. You deserve relationships that lift you up, not push you downstairs. And if the people in your life can't give you that, then maybe it's time to build a new life with people who can.